Where are you, little booger? There you are. I stubbed my toe. Damn it. Ah, come on. Oh, man. Sorry for the adult language, one person watching.
regard this as a colossal miscalculation. I mean, for a man who always says that he's interested in the science, there's not the slightest awareness that all the science that I'm aware of points in exactly the opposite direction. You can do an enormous amount by improving cracking, by improving shipment, by doing all sorts of improvements with existing fluids. Trying to start from scratch with solar and wind energy is going to turn out to be a dead loser. And if we start having these rolling blackouts like we have them in California, I think it's very dangerous. It's also, I think, important to understand that the climate stuff makes this more dangerous as well. One of the constant tropes that you hear is all the climate change in California led to the fires of 2018. 2018 was at the end of a drop in solar temperature, global temperature, by about a degree from the previous 2 years. So the short-term stuff was low. It had nothing to do with temperatures at that time. It had to do with serious mismanagement of public lands on which all of these fires started to take place. There was no global crisis on the lands that were run and managed by Georgia Pacific. So what's happening here is the Biden administration, which is bad on labor markets, bad on inflation, is now bad on energy as well. And the real question is how well can a booming economy survive if every single policy lever handled by government is being pulled in the wrong direction? I don't know the answer to that question, but I fear the results will be not what we want.
Well, to that point, there's maybe a way of thinking about that question, Richard. This will be my final prompt for you. I think we can say with something approaching certainty, there are not going to be a lot of economic policies coming out of this administration that you're going to be a big fan of. So I'm going to phrase this question in a negative. Of the ideas they're entertaining, what is the idea or proposal that you think it's most important that the Biden administration not be able to implement?
Well, I think there are four big ones. I mean, I'm just going to mention the one that we haven't talked about already, which is the taxation policy that is appropriate with this, trying to raise the rates with respect to corporate and individual taxes. But I think the basic advice that we have here is that there's always a fine equilibrium as to what should be a public expenditure and what should be a private expenditure. And I think what's happened is the essential facilities that need to be run by government have been well satisfied. All the additions now are essentially taking resources which we put to better use in private hands and trying to move them into public hands, either through direct ownership, through taxation, or through regulation. And it's the policy which says that the more we regulate, the more we tax, the more we control, the better that we will be. We'll lead to mistake after mistake in area after area. I really think that this administration is careening towards disaster on the economic front. I will leave for another day the mistakes that I think they're making in foreign policy.
You've been listening to the Libertarian Podcast.
A to the n plus b to the n plus equals c to the n for n greater than 2 if it's an integer. So you know that, so it doesn't matter. If you give a prize, think of what's going to happen. You give a prize of $1 million. A good patent on a drug like a cholesterol drug and so forth is probably worth $10 to $20 billion at least on these cases. It also costs you well over $1 billion, depending on how you count, to put these things together. If you give a prize to the first person who gets a cholesterol drug, it may be the wrong drug. The way the patent system is organized, the first fellow has to publish information about the mode of production, which allows other individuals who want to compete with him to expedite the development of alternative technologies that will undermine the kind of monopoly that starts to take place. So that what happens is, if you look to recent years, the ostensible notion of a monopoly when you have an exclusive right, it gets weaker and weaker because innovation by new companies is faster and faster. Much more efficient way to do this. You mentioned something about not picking winners. That's the essential proposition of the patent system. In order to get a patent today, you have to prove that it's got a utility function. You do not have to prove that it's effective commercialization. And in fact, most things that get patented do not turn out to be particularly effective, but the ones that really are can be worth billions of dollars. So the patent system is the one that starts to do this situation. Now you want to start talking about prizes, you get other problems. Two people come up with a different proofs at about the same time. Who gets the prize and why? And so the answer is prizes are perfectly sensible for mathematical theorems. They're utterly useless in this particular context. And if this were a good idea, you would not just use it for drugs and so forth, you use it everywhere else. Ironically, the area in which the patent system clearly works the best is in fact the single complicated molecules They're distinct and pharmaceutical products. They last. One of the features that people commonly do not understand about these drugs is that many times they're worth more at the end of their patent period than they are at the beginning of the patent period, notwithstanding the fact that new substitutes come into the market. Because one of the important things you realize is that clinical trials do not have a long longitudinal period. You have to compress their time. When you put them on the market, there's always some uncertainty about unanticipated long-term effects. But when the drug is out there now for 10 years and so forth, there's a lot of more clinical experience. And so those risks for the surviving drugs turn out to make it more attractive because they're no longer very, very substantial. So what one wants to stress is that the patent system is not some arbitrary hodgepodge put together. It was designed by a guy named Federico and Giles Ritchie, two characters back in the 1940s, sat down and drafted what was an excellent patent statute for 1952. And they understood exactly how all the moving pieces came together. Now, when you start to see these kind of superficial criticisms of the way in which the patent system works, they're by people who simply have not spent enough time working inside the bowels of the machine to see how the engine starts to function. So you don't want to get yourself involved in the process. The important thing to understand is the system is not broken. You don't want to go around fixing it and making it worse. You don't want to do it on an ad hoc basis like with these vaccines and then left hanging as to whether or not you're going to send it somewhere else. If you want to make some kind of charitable gift, and I'm strongly in favor of doing so in many of these cases, then the answer is use the existing system in order to achieve that. This is the same thing that applies everywhere. So why is rent control a terrible system? Because you put it all on the backs of the landlord. And that's the same problem that you have when COVID says that you can't evict tenants who are capable of paying and small landlords go under. The simple response in all of these cases, if you wish to hold a help a class, you don't hold the opposite number responsible. You don't ban evictions. You don't introduce rent control. What you do is you give a direct government subsidy from public monies to handle it, and that way it becomes a democratic decision rather than a unilateral decision. This kind of thing by Biden is the same kind of unilateral conduct that was featured in many of his early executive orders. This is the kind of situation which you're trying to move by imperial stuff. And why is he doing it? My guess is if he actually had to get the appropriations through Congress, he would not get the ones that he wanted. Perhaps he's right, perhaps he's wrong, but that's the correct way in which to go. To use the democratic processes, not the unilateral expropriation of tax. This is a big mistake, and we will do very well as a country if we back off of it as soon as possible.
You've been listening to the Libertarian Podcast with Richard Epstein. Richard is from the Richard's column, Libertarian, declaring ideas at Kroger.org. If you enjoy the podcast, please rate the show on iTunes or wherever you listen. For Richard Epstein, I'm Troy Simmons. Thanks for listening.
This podcast is a production of the Hoover Institution, where we advance ideas that define a free society and improve the human condition. For more information about our work, or to listen to more of our podcasts, or watch our videos, please visit Hoover.org.
Quail Institution. I'm your host for the Senate. Parliamentarian is Professor Richard Epstein, the Peter and Kirsten Bedford Senior Fellow at the Hoover Institution, Lawrence A. Tisch Professor of Law at NYU, and Senior Lecturer at the University of Chicago. Today, vaccines, public health, and intellectual property. So, Richard, there's a big argument going on right now about what the United States can or should do to help other countries around the world that have been much less successful than the U.S. and their populations vaccinated. And argument has emerged recently that the right thing to do, the humanitarian thing to do, would be to remove the patent protections for vaccines so that they become more affordable to produce or license in poorer countries. Now, you wrote about this week at Finding Ideas. When you wrote the piece, that idea was just sort of swimming around. In the time since it's been published, we had an announcement that the Biden administration is going to be pursuing this via the World Trade Organization. And their argument here is that not only would this be doing the right thing, we ought to be doing something that's in the national interest because of the goodwill that would result in the United States. What's your reaction to this idea?
Oh, I think it's a terrible idea, and I might add that even since the United States has made its announcement, there's been very protracted and rather passionate opposition to it, coming from other major vaccine suppliers, Great Britain, Germany, and so forth, and also the pharmaceutical companies are dead against it. They think it's the wrong way in which to achieve this particular end, and I think they're right with respect to the reasons that they say. Let's just start with the simplest explanation. What people need is not production capacity in vaccines, which will take 6 months or a year to develop. They need the vaccines now. The United States already supplies direct aid in one form or another to needy countries. If it really thinks that this ought to be done, there's no reason to do it on the backs of pharmaceutical companies. What you do is you buy from them at bulk rates, huge quantities, and then transship them to the places where they're needed. And in fact, you get better vaccines when you get them sooner, and you don't have to compromise intellectual property protection, which is what will happen if you put this stuff in the public domain, where not only undeveloped countries could get it, but places like China could get it, and then come into competition with the United States and with the European Party. When people start talking about humanitarian stuff, they are right about half the problem. There's a need on one end, but they're wrong about the other problem, which is how it is that you best supply it. And what's so striking about all of the impassioned statements by the Biden administration and its many supporters is they do not give any explanation as to why the alternatives that they propose are better than the simple alternative that I propose, which doesn't pose any threat whatsoever to the nature of the intellectual property system. So I think what's going to happen is you have to proceed by consensus in the WTO. It's going to take a very long time. There may be a compromise on waiver, but if so, these waivers are going to be very, very narrow. And the great tragedy is that people spend their time thinking about waivers. They won't be spending their time thinking about the things in other countries which have to be improved, which is namely the nature of the distribution system that they run. The question that you have to ask is how well they've done with the supplies of vaccines that they've already received. And my guess is, having read these various reports, is they've not done very, very well at all. I think in some cases the number was 0.2% of the population being vaccinated. That can't be a throttle or a shortcoming with respect to available supplies. It's the distribution panel. And that distribution is probably much more expensive to put into place and much more urgent. So what you're doing is you're basically making a political statement, trying to put pressure on the wrong institutions. It will result in many needless deaths that a more senseless program would avoid.
There is an argument about the distribution of vaccines that parallels something you often hear about other projects that involve public money. So I'd like you to speak to the principle in addition to the specific instance here. And this argument is, look, the government had a big role in getting these things to market, including the $18 billion that went into Operation Warp Speed. So we don't need to be overly precious about protecting investment in the vaccines because we as taxpayers have skin in the game here too. We need to be able to deploy these things in some fashion other than the profit maximizing one, if we see fit. What's your response to that?
I think that argument is wrong. What they did is they made arm's length deals with different companies. Moderna was very weak with respect to its capital, and so they needed some infusion, which they got. And then they entered into a contract. Whatever that contract is, I think is going to be the baseline for future negotiations. And if that contract gives exclusive rights to Moderna with respect to
business today, and even some of the florists out there, Tobin has created a platform in which a local community and businesses can get together and basically have a search engine like Amazon where you type in some keywords and it brings up what is available from a local business. It's very simple, but it is growing, it is active, and I can really see this as being the future of local business and a way to save it. So I'm really excited about this, and I think you're all going to enjoy this information. So without any further delay, here is Tobin Bergignan. Tobin, welcome to the show. How are you doing?
I'm doing well, Peter. Thank you for having me.
Let's talk about this. Before we do that, before we jump in, why don't you give a little background on yourself?
Personally, I am, I'm a Gen Xer through and through. Grew up in Bangor, Maine, in an academic family. I grew up in the 80s. Worked for a lot of local small businesses. I came up with the newspaper route back in the day. I actually physically delivered newspapers and collected on Sunday. I collected $2.35 on Sunday for the subscriptions. I think my first job was a retail job working with a comic book shop in downtown Bangor called Wizard of Comics. That was my first actual job. I didn't like that was in around 89, 90. And I've been working with small businesses and local businesses and major corporations since then. But that's where I got my start. I had a very small town upbringing, and also my mother was really into cooperatives. We would go and she would back when they get together and order bulk, and then we drive out to some house, and it'd be like 4 o'clock in the afternoon in the middle of winter and pitch black because it's Maine, and they'd be everyone would bring their own scale and light up the almonds. So I mean I have a lot of roots in local small business and working together. You get up in a town of 30,000 people in Maine.
Well, that leads us to jump right into what we want to talk about. You have a project going, and as soon as I read about it, I got excited. But you already talked about local businesses, so I know that this project, if you want to give a quick overview of it, really looks at like the local business district and the economics behind it. So can you start there?
Sure. Yeah. The name of the project is Virtual Storefronts, and virtualstorefronts.com is actually just been acquired. That will be coming online. You can go to virtualstorefronts.com right now, and we work. Up until now, it's been virtualstorefronts.co. So we are lucky enough now to enter the .com world and make it less confusing for everyone over 60. What Virtual Storefronts does is it brings the locally independent, non-franchise businesses into the online world in a unique way by essentially creating a search engine. Each business contributes a set of keywords that reflect their inventory, the products they have, the services they offer, the brands that they stock are all keywords inside of the search engine. So it's what happens is we're currently piloting here about 100 miles north of Atlanta in Cherokee County, North Carolina, which is just north of Cherokee County, Georgia, or close to where you are. And the way that it's working right now with our pilot is that we have about 2,000 businesses, a few more at this point. We have 1,884 keywords inside of our database. And you can actually go to virtualstorefronts.com and it will show you our search engine, and you type in what you want. It works with the way that consumers work now. You go to Amazon.com, you go to Google, you just type in what you want, and it tells you and it gives you the results that you need, or it tells you where to get it. The problem with that is that you go to Google and you type in what we want, and it tells us, what's available on Amazon, Etsy, eBay, what's available from the major e-commerce giants in whatever category you're in. It tells you what's available over at Lowe's. It tells you what's available at Walmart. Because all of these corporations, they have millions and millions of dollars to SEO optimize, right? So they have a deep pocket, and I'm not saying that that's wrong, but they have a huge amount of money to hire an army of white collar workers, right, to bring their commerce, to conform their commerce to Google's criteria. A local business person doesn't have that army, and as a result, Google is kind of blind to what local businesses are doing. There's like blinders on because Google is getting a little better at translating it, but it's not. But it's essentially just the yellow pages. Google knows what category your local business might be. It knows that it exists because it created a listing whether you wanted it or not. With reviews that you have to moderate whether you wanted to or not. And so Google knows that you're there, but it doesn't really know that much more about your business. What we do, the difference with this search engine is that the search engine your business is given a set of keywords. It works in a very similar way to Google, except it's additive, not exclusive. Google crawls the entire web of everything and reduces to the objective results, which default, work in favor of companies with better financing. Objective results, when it's just code and people who are like on the computer all the time, are inevitably going to favor big box stores that are online and e-commerce solutions that are online. So what we've done is we've created, instead of doing a crawling the entire web, we've inverted it and said, hey, each business adds in their list of keywords, so it's an additive process. It makes it a little more difficult in the beginning because you have to get the ball rolling, but now we have 1,884 keywords right here in Cherokee County, North Carolina, and those keywords each link to local businesses that have what you want. So that is how it works. We haven't gone over this in advance, but I do have, I can actually demo this, if we want to do screen sharing, but that could get confusing.
Yeah, and we should plan that from the start, because that will get confusing. So
yeah. Well, so anyone, if you are interested, I would recommend you go to virtualstorefronts.com, go to our search engine, and it just says, what are you looking for? And you type it in just the same way you do at Amazon. It conforms to the 21st century consumer habit. And it makes it easy for the consumer. And then you type in what you're looking for, like, for example, robo-worms. I'm sure that you buy robo-worms all the time. I actually don't buy robo-worms, but I was fascinated to find out that they are a thing at H&H Sports here in Cherokee, North Carolina. And if you Google robo-worms or robo-worms near me, Google is completely unaware that H&H Sports has this kind of thing that you would buy. Whereas if you type in robo-worms and you pin yourself to the location, the shopper pins themselves to the location they're searching from, and then it will tell you that in three miles away from you, that this retailer has robo-worms, and then the place that sells robo-worms in Atlanta, it'll tell you is 100 miles away from you, and every robo-worm place in between will be listed. So it kind of curates only locally owned businesses, non-franchise businesses.
When you use the example of Amazon, which is where I think a lot of people love to get away from, even though it's so convenient, that helped me understand exactly what it was and what it's doing for local businesses. Can you talk a little bit about the concept of deep inventory and how it affects consumer behavior?
Yeah, sure. I would love to. Deep inventory is a term that we use to describe how consumers perceive shopping, how they interface with the world of shopping, ever since what we call category, I might be dating myself here, category killers, like from the 1980s when the big box stores came in and supplanted the local hardware store. All of a sudden, Home Depot had everything, and they're what's called a category killer, or Walmart has everything, and they're a category killer. So what happens with the consumer in that situation in terms of deep inventory is I don't really have to think about whether they have a screwdriver at Home Depot, because Home Depot, obviously has a screwdriver because it dominates the entire, like any department store kind of mentality, dominates that
space, and then they spend a lot of advertising making people aware of that. Likewise, I don't need to figure out if there's a spatula at Walmart. That I don't have that. That's not like a calculation my brain needs to make, right? Because they have deep inventory. It's kind of a given that I can get a spatula there. Now that's the 1980s model, and that's where all these big box stores came in and really took over small town America because they had this. I'm a modern person. I don't have the time to think about it. There's nothing to be ashamed about. When you're shopping, you just don't have the time and bandwidth as a consumer to figure it out. And then Amazon put that in that level. They became a category killer of category killers like online, and their deep inventory is essentially inventory of everything in a single place. And then condition, they also piggyback on Google, where in Google you just started typing what you were looking for, and then hit enter and expect it to come. Amazon essentially used that model, so that it's a simple search window, and it just predicts, it spits out what you're looking for. Now, the reason Amazon works with deep inventory, obviously, is because they were able to create a model where they replicate like the Uber department store of the world, right? So everyone has this expectation that if it exists, that they can go to Amazon, and they type in, what they're looking for, and they can shop the results and have this kind of e-commerce experience, which is very cool and impersonal, but it has reviews and it's very useful. It's becoming less useful now that a lot of the quality of the products is bad and the reviews are fabricated, so it's losing a lot of credibility. But you can't blame, there's this kind of guilt that goes along with shoppers shopping on Amazon, and it's hard to blame the shopper for using Amazon because it's a modern, crazy world that we live in, and it's a convenient service, and I have confessions about Amazon, like I buy something. I bought a gorilla suit today, online, from an e-commerce, like dressing up like a gorilla. It's for guerrilla marketing, if you're wondering. But I did check with the local chamber of commerce here in Cherokee County to make sure that I couldn't get it locally. I couldn't get it locally. So there's a certain number of things, e-commerce makes sense. But we've come to an inflection point with consumers at this point, where consumers, they get that you can get everything. It's kind of technology and consumption are all hitting the same notes at the same time. Like, we're no longer obsessed with wow, on Facebook you can connect with everyone. It's like, yeah, I get it. The average American person's like, okay, yeah, we get it. And wow, we can get anything we want on Amazon. Yeah, we get it. The next evolution is technology that reflects the values of the people who are using it. Because your average American at this point is, okay, yeah, we get the technology, but we also get that the people running the technology and the way that the technology is set up doesn't necessarily reflect, how I want to do business, or it doesn't reflect my desire, for example, to shop local. So you have this guilt of, I'm using Amazon, but at the same time, why are we left in this spot? And the reason is because technology companies have this blind spot. They don't know how to organize and see local businesses. And as someone who's worked with local businesses and major corporations my entire life, I've worked in New York City, Minneapolis, Atlanta. I'm a graduate of college in Ohio, and so I grew up in a small town in Maine, but I've lived all over the United States. I lived in San Francisco for a year back in the 90s. So I'm not unaware of the just lost my thread. This is where you chime in.
Here's a question that I have: is that it seems to me that if local businesses are going to, if your service is going to challenge local business, challenge Amazon, and make it so that local businesses can, they're not going to be able to compete with Amazon, but they will be able to stay afloat. They will be able to thrive. That's what I'm hearing. Is this so in Cherokee County? Is it only for people in Cherokee County, or can people all over the United States order, and the local businesses there will ship it to them?
Yeah, they can. So So the problem that we're solving is that technology, basically Silicon Valley just can't interact with local businesses. They're too unwieldy. And there's a unique culture to each local business. And maintaining that culture and that kind of integrity and independence that local business owners have is a really important part of the process. And that's the way that we say it is that your storefront, which is the search result, the page that you end up at, is like a good suit. It just showcases your business and it doesn't showcase, our technology. It's like we're not front and center, you're front and center, you're the VIP if you're an independent local business. Just specifically, your question again was can anyone access it? So in terms of access, this is a remarkable technology because of the combination of the consumer pinning their location and the businesses being located. Currently, they're in our pilot area. Any business really in the country can onboard right now. We're still in early adopter phase, so we're not pushing all over the country. What we want to do is create critical mass here in Cherokee County and show people how it works. But let's say that you're in Tampa, Florida, and you come up to the hills up here in North Carolina for the summer, and you want to look up various services, or you want to buy property, or you want to know what's available in the area, or you're visiting here and you want to know what's available in the area, or you came to this area back in 2 years ago, and you remember this amazing artwork that Dean had. Dean's is a local book, music, and record shop here, where they have an amazing inventory of hundreds, tens of thousands of items that they could never put online in e-commerce fashion, or take lifetimes. It's just a mom and pop operation. People don't have time to do that. But in that situation, a consumer from anywhere in the country who had been here before, they can go online and find, they can search Dean's, find him, contact him. In the future of this, and this is, obviously after rollout and wide adoption, this really works with wide adoption, people will be able to remotely go to, if I'm visiting Phoenix, Arizona, I can get my resources lined up in advance, like figure out everything that I need in advance. The way that people do with Google at this point, but much more efficiently. It's like the yellow pages on steroids, because the people because the shopper is searching, just typing, right, what they're looking for, and the engine then anticipates, based on these linked keywords, exactly your business that has what it is they're looking for. So in terms of shopping, I should clarify, we're doing a 2-stage rollout. The first stage is what we're doing right now, which is search and storefront. So it's actually the storefront itself and search. We're building that first. We're piloting that first. There's a second stage to this, though, called chat and checkout. Chat and checkout will be introduced as an upgrade service to any business with a storefront in the future. It'll be a flat monthly rate without any kind of commission, because we have a 40-page business plan written in last year, the summer of last year, where we did deep analysis of how merchant services, primarily based in Silicon Valley, interact with merchants and what the failures are. One failure is pushing e-commerce solutions that are not the scaled solutions to local businesses that are not very good solutions. Another is that these Grubhub, Yelp, a lot of these services are creating artificial barriers in order to, they create actually artificial. I read an article about Grubhub generating fake numbers so that they intercept calls to restaurants in order to collect a commission. So there's huge commission rates with a lot of these delivery services and third-party apps that we see that are very common, Uber Eats, et cetera, et cetera. There's a lot out there. And what we learned is business owners really do not like being, taken for granted and taken for a ride on the fees, because these fees are astronomically high. These are commission rates that go as high as 25% per order. That goes right out the door. So when we release chat and checkout as a flat monthly rate, It's where there's no commissions involved, a low monthly rate for merchant fees. And the way that it's structured, we did research on this, the way that it's structured, in order to favor how local merchants work, it's a virtualization of the experience of walking into a business. You know, hi, how are you doing? What is it you're looking for? It's a chat. It's just it's a text chat with images, and you can send things back and forth to each other. But it's virtualizing the personal experience that local merchants, as we say, local merchants have a monopoly on customer service, and this is a technology that leverages their unique advantage in the marketplace, which is customer service, as opposed to pushing them into like a Shopify store where it's just automated checkout and an impersonal experience. So even as we move into e-commerce, it's going to reflect the actual experience of the shopper, and the expertise, and bring the expertise of the shopkeeper and the people working in the shop directly to the customer in the form of a chat. And chat is actually globally, chat is preferred by the 86% of consumers globally prefer chat as a method to contact businesses over any other besides in person. It's in person, then chat. So we're moving into the future of how people want to interact with businesses, and then making that the path to transaction, the path to checkout.
So a few weeks ago, I put out that I wanted to do this 5 days per week, and what I would need to do that, and I put that at freemanbeyondthewall.com/goal, and a lot of you have responded. I am a quarter of the way to my goal. So go there, check it out. If you want to see me do this more often and actually hit some current events and get some guests on to talk about that, head on over to freemanbeyondthewall.com/goal and make it happen. Thank you. I guess next, I'm going to talk about the digital economy, and one of the main concerns a lot of consumers have is privacy and rights, user rights. So how can local merchants advance their cause using this?
So here, we both lived in New York for a while. I lived in a transitional neighborhood called, what they call a transitional neighborhood, because it was right next to Crown Heights, where Jay-Z and Ricky Small grew up, and I was in Prospect Heights, which is like a little sliver of a neighborhood, middle-class black neighborhood, when I lived in Brooklyn. And then there was Park Slope, which gentrified in the 80s, and it's a massive neighborhood in Brooklyn. What happened is that after I left New York City in 2003, I was working in the photography industry and moved to Minneapolis to do more commercial photography. And after I left, what happened to Prospect Heights was it hopscotched over. It was always like Park Slope was the place to go and get bagels and fancy stuff. We'd take walks down there. It would be like a 20-minute walk on a Sunday just to get the bagels or whatever it is we're looking for. There wasn't a whole lot of service in Prospect Heights when I was living there. What ended up happening is that after I left this neighborhood, is that because it was this, for lack of a better word, like hipster neighborhood, that became gentrified, all of a sudden the stuff in that neighborhood was fancier than the stuff in Park Slope, because it gentrified later. Park Slope gentrified in the 80s, so it was kind of like full gentrification. And then because it was gentrifying in the 2000s, it was kind of next level gentrification in Prospect Heights. Now, there is a reason why I'm telling you this, and there's an analogy to the unique position that local merchants are in right now in terms of e-commerce. Local merchants are one of the few parties in this world of doing business that have zero skin in the data mining game. They are not doing data mining. They are not benefiting from data mining. Data mining is privacy invading technology, does not benefit their bottom line at this point. So they are in a unique position going forward in the world of commerce to lead the way, because it's not beneficial to these businesses to lead the way to privacy protections for the shopper, and to create a new economy where shoppers are protected by default. The analogy that I use to describe the role of this company, the company that makes virtual storefronts as view space, is a privacy, safety, and security company that builds networks. It's based in Atlanta, and this is our second project of development. So the analogy that I use is that virtual storefronts is almost like an open air market or like a mall, where we police the area. We write the rules about how the technology is used inside the space. And what we see is a lot of local merchants saying, we don't want our customers spied on. We don't want our customers walking in to buy skis and seeing Ski Utah ads on their phones for the next 12 months straight. There's no benefit to them for that. That data mining model is actually the 1980s version of like the internet. And we're building the 2020 version of the internet, where it's aligned values. It's respecting the consumer. It's respecting the person who walks into your shop by not spying on them. Now, I want to be clear that we do collect some basic statistical data about what people are searching for. It's completely anonymous and non-invasive, but that's useful information for us and for people who are, and for our customers, the merchants around the network. But it's a unique opportunity because we don't have, our merchant customers aren't coming to us and being like, tell us, every time someone walks into this area and we need to know if our customer is walking into a store in Chambly right now, or what their behavior is, or whether they're voting for Donald Trump, or any of that information. Our major corporations want to know that because it's behavioral information that they can process and target on social platforms and in Google's advertising platforms. It's very beneficial if you're a multi-million-dollar corporation to look at the behavior of the people who are using who are shopping and target it. But if you're a local operation, then it's just not a huge benefit. So we are in this inflection point, also inflection point in our culture, where the average American consumer is like, okay, I get it, we're data mined, I get it, we're spied on, I get it, technology, yay, who cares? We live with it. It's become the air that we breathe. Uspace has a mission statement, called Online for Good, and it's a short statement about, this is the environment. This is a habitat that we live in. We get up in, we go to. It's just like going to a job or whatever. We're here to build a humane version of that habitat that doesn't exploit the people that use it. Hence aligned values. Hence local merchants are obvious early adopters, and so local merchants working together, much in the same way that they work together to create a local business district and a deep inventory. I don't know that we actually covered how local businesses create a deep inventory. We should cover that. They work together to create the next evolution of the internet that absolutely must come about because everyone's sick and tired of what we have today, which is a lot of mistrust. Google can't be trusted for its results. Some of the results that you get on virtual storefronts, Google will know, but these businesses have no control over it. It's just a handout from Google. Like Google doesn't even Google can change how they determine what the results are all the time. And unless you have a small army of engineers like constantly tracking this, you're at their mercy. There's no accountability. Whereas on our platform, our algorithm is simple. You're the #1 search result for those people who are closest to you searching for what you have. And if you're the second closest, then you are the second search result. If you're the 200 closest, you're the 200th search result. But our algorithm is completely transparent. It's publicly declared. And we do this for the benefit of people that are using our service. The merchants who rely on these search results. No one can cut in line. The way you cut in line with Google is when you pay Google, a few $1,000s, your search result goes up. But who needs this headache as a local merchant? That's just, that's again a scaled solution that people are being pushed into for a non-scaled problem, which is local shopping. So our algorithm is basically your location and the location of the person who's searching is our algorithm.
Let's go back to something you mentioned there. You mentioned local businesses and deep inventory.
Yes.
So, yeah, how do we get there?
So we went through a lot of how category killers in the 1980s had deep inventory, and then in 2010 we have Amazon with deep inventory. It's just a huge block of inventory. And then what you have the weakness that you have among local businesses in this era is that each business is segmented into its own little tiny space. And so maybe this business has that spatula that I don't know, maybe I'll make a phone call, it's too confusing, I'm going on Amazon, right? What we do is we take all of what we do is we say, all of the local businesses work together and create a deep inventory, right? So that what we have now is like nearing 2,000 search items in this area, so that people can build the expectation of getting relevant search results. So the place that doesn't have a spatula isn't penalized, but it's actually helped by the place that does have a spatula. And together they create, as a group, they create this online business district in the area, and as a group they can mimic the inventory that you get, the deep inventory that you get at the big box stores or in e-commerce. So it's simply working together to fill in all of the gaps. And once you realize how, I live in a town of 1,700 people. It's a post-industrial NAFTA town. So in 1995, this town had twice as many people. All the jobs went away. There's a Lee factory, there's a Levi's factory here. All the jobs went away overnight when they went to Mexico. And so this is what's considered kind of a ghost town. As I like to say, if we can make it here, we can make it anywhere. But it's kind of a post-industrial American landscape in some ways. But it's amazing how much stuff there is here. Like currently we have about 10% of the available stores, small businesses in this area that are inside of our search engine, and you can solve a lot of problems when you're just searching for stuff on our search engine right now. You can figure out and find things that you need. So even at an early stage that our pilot's happening now, already these local businesses are coming together to create that deep inventory to mimic what's happening in Amazon. It's simply that the shopper has been denied these tools. And we've developed, we're in a fortunate position where we've been able to develop a technique by developing keywords with these businesses. We worked with the businesses to develop a set of relevant keywords that have relevance